Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. It is pre-match build-up showtime with Liverpool back in European Cup action on Tuesday night. Just a tiny bit more than 72 hours after that incredibly dramatic game against Aston Villa at the weekend. Liverpool are already back in action in a game where I think we've got a really good chance to take control of this group. And I think the exact importance of the result will depend a lot on what happens in the other game. You've got Napoli playing against Salzburg. This time it's at Napoli. Last time out, that game ended with a narrow win for Napoli, and I think it depends on how that goes. If Napoli win, then we could open up a huge gap on Salzburg. I believe the gap would potentially be unassailable depending on things like head-to-head records and stuff like that. If it's a draw, it's a huge chance for Liverpool to get up to the top of the group and establish some control there. Personally, I'm not sure Jurgen Klopp is too fussed about actually finishing top of the group, because if the draws over the past couple of years have shown us anything, it's the fact that it doesn't actually make a huge difference. It slightly alters your chances in the round of 16, but there's always going to be good teams finishing first in their group and then absolutely brilliant teams also sometimes finishing second in their group. So I don't think he's hugely fussed about that. I think the thing that he's mainly concerned about is actually getting through to the knockout stages in the first place. And I think this is a really important game in terms of, like I said, putting ourselves in the driving seat in the group and potentially giving ourselves the chance to rest a few players further down the line. Obviously, after this, we've got two more games. Napoli at home, which you sense is going to be a very big one that could decide the exact standings of the group come the final match day. And then the last one is Salzburg away, which ideally, given how good Salzburg are and how brilliant they are going forward, they certainly showed that at Anfield, you'd want it to be wrapped up by then, especially given that it's a midweek match right in the middle of December where our fixtures just go absolutely crazy. You know, we've currently got a situation with a League Cup game where we don't even know where to put it. So it would be very nice if we could rest a few players for that. And I think we can start working towards that by getting a very solid result against Genk. But as I said, thinking about team news going into the game, it is coming very soon after the Aston Villa match. And Jurgen Klopp did address that in his press conference before for his pre-match conference that he held this afternoon, saying that there will probably be some rotation. We will see some fresh faces. Certainly not to the extent that the squad will be completely unrecognisable. He said that he will still be trying to pick the kind of team that is pretty much the best one we have available, but his decisions will have to be informed by which players have recovered well from the Aston Villa game and which ones haven't. And of course, with Manchester City on the horizon on Sunday afternoon, the last thing we want to be doing is wearing any players out and that leading to any injuries. So that'll certainly come into how he picks his side. I think Mo Salah's a very interesting one, because as we know, he's been struggling with an ankle problem ever since that game against Leicester. He's been slightly in and out of the side, and when he's been playing, he certainly doesn't look 100% fit. He looks like he's slightly holding back. He came off reasonably early in the game against Aston Villa, given how long Jurgen Klopp normally likes to wait before making substitutions. He changed that very early. He took Salah off around about the hour mark, which I think surprised us a little bit, even though Mo Salah wasn't having the best game. So I think there's certainly something to consider there. And again, with the City game, I think it might be a good idea to give Salah a full week's rest so he is fit and firing for that game against our title rivals. So that is something to keep an eye on. Jordan Henderson also didn't take part in an open training session today. He was instead training independently away from the squad, so he's still fit. It looks like maybe it's more just a matter of Jurgen Klopp trying to make sure that any players who are getting a little bit worn out are being looked after. I think we've seen this in the past with Andrew Robertson as well, when he had a really intense run of games. He trained separately from the rest of the squad to go under his own bespoke regime to make sure that he was kept fighting fit. So it's certainly interesting there with John Henderson as well. I think he's one of them players who, because of his injury history and the way that he plays, the intensity with which he plays football matches, I do think maybe he's not quite capable of playing as many games as other members of the squad. It's also something to do with the demands of playing central midfield for Liverpool as well. But that's another one that I think it's worth keeping an eye on, whether or not he plays, because I think he's certainly a player that Jurgen Klopp will be desperate to have in his lineup come the game against Manchester City on Sunday. So we're probably going to see some rotation. I don't think it'll be a weakened side by any means. I don't think it will look anything like the side that played against Arsenal in the League Cup last week, but I will certainly be looking forward to seeing exactly how Jurgen Klopp lines up on Tuesday night. So with that in mind, what do I think the starting 11 is going to be? I think the goalkeeper, I'd be willing to bet the house on this one, although I probably wouldn't just in case of a last minute injury or anything like that. It's probably going to be Alisson Becker in between the sticks. Hopefully he can get another clean sheet. We've had a kind of weird situation going on so far this season where Liverpool have defended well, but when it comes to actually keeping clean sheets, we've been a bit rubbish, to be perfectly honest. And sometimes it's fine. You know, it happened against Genk last time out in the away game, and it wasn't a huge problem because we were 4-0 up by that point. However, it happened at the weekend against Aston Villa, and I think it caused all of us to suffer a fair few heart palpitations that we could have done without. So hopefully a clean sheet for Alisson Becker in this game. That will certainly do him the world of good. He mentioned in the press conference today, he joined Jurgen Klopp, about how he has been quite irritated with how small lapses in defensive concentration have led to us conceding goals so far this season. So clearly there's something the squad want to work on there. In front of him, I think Virgil van Dijk has to play, and then I reckon we're going to see a little bit of Joe Gomez, because I think while Dejan Lovren it seems to be the first choice centre-back partner to Virgil van Dijk, while Joel Matip is absent, I think a lot of that's to do with things like experience and stuff like that, the fact that Joe Gomez has had a slightly shaky start to the season, but we always want to see Joe Gomez get game time. We know that he's young, we know that he can improve, so I think this is a good opportunity to play him here ahead of what I think will be a return for Dejan Lovren in the Man City game. So I think Gomez and Van Dijk are going to be your centre-back pairing. I think Trent Alexander-Arnold plays on the right-hand side, and then I think at left-back we might actually see a rest for Andrew Robertson. Obviously played the full 90 minutes at Aston Villa. He's been proper put through the paces recently in a Liverpool shirt. He is essentially irreplaceable at left back, and I think he's one of the changes that Jurgen Klopp would be looking to make, because he is yet another player who's going to be imperative to our game plan against Man City. So I think James Milner will come in at left back instead. Ahead of that defensive midfield, Fabinho absolutely has to come back in. Obviously did not play against Arsenal, didn't play against Aston Villa either because of the threat of him picking up another yellow card that would lead to a suspension for the City game. So he should be ready and raring to go, which would be fantastic. It would mean we'd have someone really, high octane in the engine room, someone who can deliver the goods, which means that if other players are feeling the burn a little bit, if they're slightly tired from their exploits at the weekend, then Fabinho will be able to cover them. We saw that it's kind of a similar situation in the away game against Genk, where Keita and Oxlade-Chamberlain were playing such advanced roles, and Fabinho was asked to do so much in midfield, and by and large he did deliver on that request. So I think he plays in this game, and then I think ahead of him, I reckon Oxlade-Chamberlain's going to play. I think Jurgen Klopp may be considering starting Oxlade-Chamberlain against Manchester City, considering Ox's fantastic performances against City in his first season in a Liverpool shirt, especially those two games at Anfield where he scores a screamer in both of them. Also played reasonably well against Genk, gets the 2 goals, slightly undisciplined defensively, but it's certainly something to work on. And at Anfield against a supposedly much weaker side is a wonderful testing ground where we can gradually build up Oxlade-Chamberlain's fitness a little bit more. So I think he probably starts in this game. And then I think alongside him, we probably won't go for the same experiment with Keita and Ox ahead of Fabinho that we did away from home, because like we've said, while it was fantastic going forward, there was so much work for Fabinho to do, and we can't afford to wear him out for the game against Manchester City. So I think Gini Wijnaldum will probably be playing as the third midfielder. I think Henderson gets a little bit of a rest, even though he has been having these bespoke training sessions. I think we want to make sure he is 100% fit and firing for that game against Man City. So Fabinho at the base, and then Oxlade-Chamberlain and Gini Wijnaldum either side of him in the midfield. And then the attack, I think we're going to see one more change here, and I do think it's going to be Mohamed Salah dropped out. His form has been slightly iffy. He hasn't been at the top of his game for, I'd say, around about a month now, certainly since that injury that he picked up against Leicester. So I think he gets a little bit of a rest here, ready for the game against Man City. And I think Divock Origi will come in, which means Mane will get moved to the right, Firmino will carry on playing down the centre, and Divock Origi will take that extra space on the left. So taking a look at Genk, then most of what we know about them does come from our Champions League outing against them. I think it was just 2 weeks ago now. It feels like ages. The games are coming so thick and fast at the moment that a game 2 weeks ago feels like a distant memory at the moment. But it was very recently that we played Genk, and I think they played a very solid game. That, like I said, they did cut us open at times, and I think if it wasn't for the fact that their finishing was nowhere near the same standard as ours, then they could have caused a few problems. They obviously had that goal that was disallowed for offside that I believe would have made it 1-1 at the time. Actually, no, it wasn't offside. It was I think it was either an offside or a foul from the player who scored the header or something like that. But either way, they did create a few chances. You could argue that maybe it was just an example of Liverpool holding a very good offside line, because what looked like Genk getting in behind our defence so often could have actually been some very good discipline from Liverpool. Obviously, now that we have the benefit of VAR, I feel like defenders are much more willing to commit to an offside trap, because they know they aren't going to get caught out by an error from the official on the line. They know that if they do hold their line well and they trust themselves, then the technology is available to make sure it bails them out if the officials don't do their job properly. So I think maybe we were just doing our job very well there, and it just looked like Genk were causing us a few problems. But when they did get in, their finishing wasn't great, and I think we can't rely on that this time. We can't rely on that happening again, because you feel like maybe Genk's luck might change for this match. However, In terms of luck, they still haven't got their first choice goalkeeper back, which is a little bit of a bonus from Liverpool because he didn't play in the game at Genk either. And I think the backup goalie they used was a bit naff, to be honest. The goals we scored were fantastic, but like the Mane chip, he gets way too low, way too early, and allows Sadio Mane to think the ball over him. The first Oxlade-Chamberlain goal as well, he doesn't even dive for it, he just watches the ball sail into the far corner. The other two goals were absolutely fantastic. There's not too much he can do about them, pardon me. The one where Salah gets in one-on-one and slots it, or the absolutely beautiful Oxlade-Chamberlain flick that goes in off the crossbar. But I don't think he looked like the best goalkeeper in the world, so that is a little bit of a bonus from Liverpool. And I think also, taking a look at how they are doing domestically, it's a little bit iffy. We've always had Genk down as one of the better teams in Belgium. The fact that they keep qualifying for the Champions League shows that they are always consistently in like the top 2 or 3 teams fighting for the league, but it hasn't quite gone that way so far. Since their game against Liverpool, they've had some slightly mixed results as well. So I do think, given the position they're in the Champions League at the moment, the group is 7 points for Napoli, 6 for Liverpool, 3 for Salzburg, and 1 for Genk. They may be getting towards a point where they consider throwing in the towel a little bit. And I know that sounds bizarre, and the way their coach was talking in their press conference, he did kind of seem to be saying that he's still sending the first team out for this match because it's a chance to play at the home of the European champions and a chance to at least give the fans something to shout about. It could galvanise their season as well, but I think their minds may be in slightly different places if their league campaign isn't going so well, because that is the more realistic priority for them at the moment. But I think Liverpool do have to be careful because they weren't rubbish. You never get games against rubbish teams in the Champions League. We pretty much know that now, especially last season playing against Red Star Belgrade. We thought they were naff at Anfield, and then we went to their own backyard and they actually gave us a really, really good game and beat us 2-0. The fact of the matter is, any team that's in the Champions League is one of the best teams in their country at any given time. They're not used to losing, so Genk will not come to Anfield with a loser's mentality. They could pull off a similar, not shock because we eventually won the game, but a similar game plan to the one that Salzburg employed. So we have got to be vigilant. We cannot treat this like an easy win, and the most important thing is to get those 3 points that will put us in the driving seat of this Champions League group and put us potentially with 1 foot in those all-important knockout stages. So that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, as always, you know what to do. Hit the like button down there, hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll be back tomorrow evening after we've hopefully beaten Genk to secure 9 points from 4 games in the Champions League. Until then, bye for now.